Love language number four. So this one's acts of service. Now, this one could potentially be described as a bit of a boring one because, depending on how you want to frame it, it does tend to normally involve household chores. No one's favorite thing to do, I think. Well, I haven't met many people that do like chores, but, maybe you do, so, what do I know? But this one can be a little bit of a more controversial one because people have very different expectations when it comes to people, like, the partners in a relationship and who does what around the house. Now, look, I'm not gonna sit here and make any, like, grand divine doctrines around about who, like, what should be done by the man or what should be done by a woman or who should do what. I think that is going into very dangerous territory, and the reason why is because those expectations around who does what changes over time, and and with different cultures it changes as well. So it's like you're dealing with multiple layers of kind of influence there. But I think one of the strongest one is the person's parents. So each partner's parents really greatly influences how their expectations are when it comes to a relationship. So if, let's say, one partner, their parents, their dynamic was the mum did a lot of the housework and the dad just did, the yard work around the house, mowed the lawns, did a job, came home, yada, 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 stuff like that. Really, in what would be called the Western world, very traditional family values. But then in another household, you might have the complete reverse. Maybe the dad was the homemaker and the mother was actually the breadwinner of the household. So both of those partners, when they link up, are going to have very different ideas around about who does what. And sometimes that can be a real clash. Now, if neither of them are, neither have acts of service as their primary love language, maybe they could kind of work it out on their own because they just kind of, I don't know, they don't value it. Well, I wouldn't say value it as much, but it doesn't hit as hard as the other love languages, so they might be alright. But people who do have acts of service as their primary love language, their expectations or what they think their partner should be doing or bringing to the table in the relationship is going to have a big influence on where their love tank kind of sits. Now, I do want to state that, you can normally tell if someone has acts of service as their primary love language. Usually if they're asking their partner a lot to do things, like, could you do this, could you clean the garage, or, could you make dinner, or could you clean up the kids' mess that they made with the toys when they were playing this afternoon and stuff like that, or, can you just clean the floors? If there's a lot of those, and to the partner that doesn't have love language as acts of service, to them they might feel like that's nagging, then that person is nagging them, and that's just going to really grind their gears and kind of piss them off. But what you have to understand about these love languages, people are normally kind of somewhat subtly crying out for what their love language is. So in that instances, I'd say more than likely that person's love language is acts of service because they're asking you to do things often. And I think if you know your love language is acts of service, I think what would be a good idea or some way or a way you can get around it is, and people might not like to hear this, but I think you have to adapt your use of language a bit. So instead of asking could you, ask would you, and then follow it up with thanks, with something along the lines of thanks, I really appreciate that so much, and be genuine about that, because if it comes off you just being sarcastic or not being legitimate, then the person's going to easily pick up on that emotionally and feel used and feel like you're manipulating them, and then we'll go into that a little bit later. But the thing is, love isn't forced. Like, no one wants to feel like they're forced to do something. So love is always about that choice and that ability to do something for someone. It's like, the reality is, if once the wheels get turning with these acts of service, and you ask for things, you learn to ask for things in the right way. If your love language is acts of service, when you learn how to ask for things in a non-combative or non kind of nagging way, you can get a lot of out of it, because the partner or your partner will eventually get to the point where they'll jump at the opportunity, because they see what's going to make, because you're telling them pretty much directly, this will make me happy, like, I'd really appreciate it if you did this. And they'll jump at that, because who doesn't want to be in a good relationship? Like, everyone likes to feel useful. Everyone likes to reality likes to contribute, regardless of their expectations of the past, or what they what their parents' experience was like, and how that's shaped what they expect. It's like, regardless of that, everyone wants to feel like they can contribute to the relationship. And pleasing your spouse, when it comes to even just doing something as mundane as doing the dishes, is, can be thrilling, So I think if it needs to be looked at it in that perspective. So use the word would instead of could, and then follow it up with why you would like someone to do that. So like, that you would like explain that you would really appreciate them. Don't just leave it at could you do that, or like, would you do that. The reason why I don't like the word could is because it kind of asks, it seems like an absolute question, like, do you have the mental and like physical capacity to clean the floor? Like, and the person's going to think to them, yeah, I do. Like, what, do you think I'm an idiot? Of course I can do that. Like, I can physically do that. But they'll come at from that angle, and then from that point, they're going to feel like you're kind of like that, when you ask for these things, that you're, kind of looking down on them, and think that they don't have the capability to do that, and that they can't handle it, and that's going to piss them off more, and just going to get them to the point where they go, you know what, maybe I'm not going to do it. Like, kind of, screw you, I'm not doing it. Reality, they might not say that, but they'll passively aggressively not do it. And then you, as the person who has acts of service as your primary love language, you don't get the love you want, which is them doing something for you, like, showing their love by doing something for you. And then they resent you because they feel like you're forcing them to do something, which is, not good. Like, manipulation. And you might not think it is manipulation. You might be, well, that has to get done. Not saying it doesn't. Not saying it doesn't have to get done. But the way you go about it, it's like, you can say the same thing content-wise, but depending on how you say it, your tonality or the specific words you use can, impart very different meanings. And I think that's just something you have to understand, because you can be right and you can be righteous in your assessment, knowing that, the dishes needed to get done, or the kids needed to get picked up from school or whatever. But you can also be in a shit relationship, and, that's, great for you if you want to live miserably. So, you have to think about it, unfortunately. And moving to the partner now, like, so the partner who doesn't have acts of service as their love language, or as their primary love language, this is something you can do to serve your partner who has acts of service as their primary love language. So what I'd recommend to you, and this is an activity I think you should get into the habit of, is writing on a little card saying, today I will do ... So, maybe it's take out the trash, or maybe it's pick up the kids from school, or maybe it's cook dinner. Well, like, it doesn't matter what the hell it is. Like, just as long as it's something that that person would appreciate, then write that and then say, because I love you. Like, because I love you, I'm going to do this today. Or, something along those lines. And then give that card, like, write that down in the morning, and then give that card to your spouse or partner, so they can see that and acknowledge that, oh my God, this person's going to do this for me because they love me. And, that's a huge help. Like, I was worried, well, not worried, but I was, having to deal with the mental processing of thinking, damn, what am I going to cook for dinner? Or like, how am I going to find the time to pick up the kids and stuff? But this person has alleviated that for me. Like, wow, they must really care. That's one thing you can do. Another tactic or kind of, activity you can do is ask your spouse who has acts of service as their primary love language, ask them to write a list of 10 things they would like you to do they would like you to do for them over the next month. So they'll write down a list, and I'm sure they'll have a long list. If they've got acts of service, they probably have a long list of things you can do for them. And they'll write that down, and then they hand that back to you, and then you go about over that next month ticking off all those items, or at least as many as you can. Like, maybe you might not hit all 10, but damn, 7 or 8 out of 10 is pretty damn good, you know what I mean? And if you've never done something like that before, maybe 6 is pretty good. You'll have to, depending on at what point your relationship is and where both of your love tanks are, maybe 4 out of 10 might be a huge monumental effort. But it's obviously getting as close as possible to 10 would be ideal. And you got to have to understand that, like, a way to encapsulate this, especially the person that has acts of service as their primary love language, is that actions speak louder than words. And I know you could think maybe gift giving is an act of service, and I can kind of understand that, but I think they're a little bit separate, where it's like gift giving is more about going, like I said, about taking something that goes, hey, this reminded me of you, and I thought it was cool, and it reminds me of you, and I care about you, and I want you to have it. Well, acts of service are more like, I want to do something for you that alleviates, like, takes the burden off you. It's like you're taking a burden away from them, while gift is more like giving them, joy. So I feel like there's a little bit of a difference between an act of service and gift giving, but semantics. Give me one sec. What's the other one I had to talk about? Yeah, okay. Yeah, sorry, the doormat. Goddamn idiot. So when I talked earlier about, like, don't do it, don't be manipulative and stuff like that. So if your primary love language is active service, don't use fear or manipulation or guilt to kind of get someone to do something. Like I said, no one likes to be forced to do anything. And if someone is scared of you, like, scared of not doing something for you, otherwise there might be huge repercussions, that's not really love. And neither is whether it's like you hold back your love for them unless they do something for you is going to make them feel guilty and just not good. And I don't feel like that's the way you should feel. Like, it's kind of like you're winning so that they lose so you can win. And it's like, that's a zero-sum game like that doesn't work in relationships. It may work in cutthroat business environments, but geez, do you want your relationship to be like that? Doesn't sound like a long-lasting strategy for a great relationship. Oh god, can't believe I forgot the last one. So I said at the beginning that acts of service are kind of like usually tend to be like chore based or like household activity kind of thing that you have to do, either taking out the trash or countless other examples. But also try and think of some non-chore ways to serve your partner. So one might be, and I thought this one was actually pretty good, run interference for your partner. So what does that mean? So let's say your partner who's likes acts of service, has a favorite TV show, or they like to watch, I don't know, documentary, or if they're a dude, they might like to watch a certain sports game on a Wednesday night at XYZ time. What you can do is run interference. So pretty much take over all of the kind of household goings on. So, it could be just like preoccupying the kids. Like maybe you just, instead of the kids running around and playing all over the place, you take them to their room and you play there with the kids, so that your partner can sit there and watch their TV, or like watch whatever they wanted to watch in peace. Or maybe they might like reading instead, so maybe they really want to get through this book, so you take the kids away, or you take whatever pressures or emergencies, like household emergencies, are going on, you take that pressure away from them for a time and give them that space that they can do that thing that they love. And they'll notice that you've done that, because it's kind of like, I wouldn't say, I'm going to stick with that's not a chore-based thing, because chore-based is like taking out the trash, but, playing with the kids should never be a chore, well, at least in theory. So, yeah, let's think of it like that. But, yeah, run that interference to kind of give them the space to do what they really love, or, like, what they're interested in. And they'll view that, like, as they, should, which is, like, an act of service. And they'll notice it, like, those people are like these acts of service people are, they're attuned to that kind of stuff. So like they'll very much see what you're doing for them and appreciate like what you've done. So, and at the end of the day, like I mean, you still get that warm fuzzy feeling that you know you're doing the right thing, even though you might not be in the room with them at that moment for them to relay that to you. You'll still know, and they'll still know. So yeah, we'll move on to the final love language pretty soon.